You're listening to School Counseling Simplified, a podcast with easy-to-implement strategies for busy school counselors. Here's your host, Rachel Davis from Bright Futures Counseling.
Hey there, have you joined Impact yet? Remember, this is my new membership program for school counselors where you'll get access to monthly class lesson plans, small group curriculum, and individual activities. Plus, you'll get to connect with me and other school counselors through live Zoom calls and in our exclusive Facebook community. Wouldn't it be nice to have someone plan all of your counseling lessons and activities, provide the resources to you each month, and show you step by step how to use them, when to use them, and who to use them with? If you're thinking, heck yes, then Impact is made for you. Your counseling life is about to get a whole lot easier. So what are you waiting for? Sign up today at stressfreeschoolcounseling.com/impact. Hey y'all, thanks for listening to another episode of School Counseling Simplified. So today I'm going to talk to you about how to collect data in your individual sessions. Now, if you listened to last month's episode on how to collect data in small groups, there is some overlap because these data collection strategies are great across the board. But I encourage you to listen because I'm going to share some new things. And this is what makes those data collection tools great, is that you can reuse them time and time again, and you're not having to reinvent the wheel each time. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing I want to share with you are 4 ways that you can collect data. So the number one way actually isn't a data collection tool so much as a process you can do. And that's something I mentioned in the last episode, which is an observation. So by simply doing a student observation, if you remember in the last episode, I shared that by doing observations, you are, showing solidarity with the teacher and you're supporting the student outside of your counseling session time. But you can also use that time to collect data. So don't just go in the observation and watch, and you want to have a plan for what you're doing. You don't want to sit in there and think, what am I looking for exactly? You do want to observe what the student's doing, but you want to have a plan for the data you're going to collect. So before you go in to do an observation, determine what you're looking for. So if this is a specific behavior you're looking for, a specific interaction with a teacher, a specific interaction with another student, maybe you're seeing if they're utilizing a coping strategy you've taught them, or maybe if they're becoming self-aware of their feelings or of a trigger. Maybe you're looking to see if they know how to use a conflict resolution tool that you taught them. So have in mind what you're looking for. Bring a little clipboard with you so you're able to take notes and track the frequency of how often they're doing this thing, or if they looked like they were about to do the skill that you taught them but something inhibited them from doing it. That way you can use this information to talk with them about it in your next session. And you don't want to be like creepy or in the back. You want to let the kids know, like, hey, I might come in and hang out in your class for a little bit, see what you guys are doing. And then during the session, you can reference it like, hey, when I was in your class the other day, I saw this. So don't keep it a secret from the student or anything. You want them to be involved with their own progress as well. But an observation can be a really powerful way to collect data. So you want to have in mind what you're looking for, and that's whether or not they're meeting this objective or meeting this goal that you're working on in your individual counseling sessions. So grab a clipboard, jump in there, and start taking some notes. Now, the other way you can collect data, the second way, is through ParentTeacher Surveys. So these are those behavior progress monitoring scales. So big name, but very simple. Basically, it's just a survey that you're sending to parents and teachers before and after services. So in that initial meeting that you're going to have, I mentioned in the last episode where we talked about collaboration, I mentioned that you should have a meeting with parents and teachers before you get started. That way you're all on the same page. And this is a great time to pass out those, get them to turn in their referral form, sign the permission slip, and pass out these surveys. Have them fill them out on the spot. That way you don't have to worry about getting them returned. You can do them virtually or paper. I actually have versions of both in my TPT store that I'll link to in the show notes. But have them fill it out, and that way you already have a baseline of what the student's capable of, a baseline of their behaviors or of their, for example, you can have one for like, if it's friendship is what you're working with them on, you could have a list of the desired behaviors, and then the parents are going to answer, or the teachers are going to answer on a scale, often, sometimes, rarely, almost never, whatever. You have like a scale 0 to 5, and it would say like, can resolve a conflict with friends, and then they're rating it. Now you want to get the date, and you want to indicate that this is the baseline data that you're collecting. Then you're going to send the exact same thing out at the end of the period of sessions. So if you're seeing the student for 8 weeks, on the 8th week, you're going to send it back out to parents and teachers to collect the data, and then you can see based on their responses if the students have improved or not. So maybe before it said almost always, and then it dropped down to never. Well, then something's definitely not working. But hopefully it's the other way around, where it's like sometimes and then almost always, or something like that. So you can use their responses to collect the data and to see what's happening, if the students are performing better at these social skills, or these skills that they're working on after counseling services with you. If you want to be a little extra and get even more data, you can send one at a midpoint. So after 4 weeks, see one, and then you can, do a line chart and kind of see how things are progressing. Maybe they regressed a little bit, or maybe they just continued to progress week after week. The third way that you can collect data is by using a rating scale. So a rating scale is something that you do with the student during each session. You kind of ask them how they're feeling about their progress, or how they're feeling. So for example, let's say that it's on self-control. You can ask them on a scale of 1 to 10 how in control they're feeling, or how well they feel that they can use self-control strategies to calm down that week. And it's interesting to see week after week how this changes. And finally, the fourth one is one of my go-tos. It is self-assessment. So a self-assessment, again, you want to do as a pre and post test. So just like the other paper you're sending to parents and teachers, this one you're giving to the student themselves. So you're going to have some questions on there that they can answer, and encourage them to answer honestly. There are no right or wrong answers. This is just a way for you to gauge where they're at before the sessions start. Then in the last session, send the exact same one, and you'll have the dates on them so you can see where they've progressed. So for example, a question could say, I know which coping strategy to use when I feel angry. And maybe before they didn't have a coping strategy, but maybe now they answer yes that they do. Now, I love to use a digital form for this, such as Google Forms, because it just makes the data collection super simple. So I have some self-assessments in my TPT store as well, and they have digital and paper versions. So I will link to those in the show notes so you can check them out. But you can totally make your own. You don't need to buy them if you don't want to. You can just simply go in and write the questions with yes or no answers in Google Forms, and that's a simple way to start collecting data. So those are 4 data collection tools that you can use. Now, what do you do when you have the data? Well, I briefly mentioned this in an earlier episode when I was talking about how long you're going to see students for individual counseling. And you want to remember, you are not a therapist. You are here to provide support for the students so they can thrive in the academic setting. So you're not doing long-term therapy, you're doing short-term solution-focused school counseling. So what that means is once you collect this data, you're going to assess it. So who cares if we collect a bunch of data if we don't do anything with it, right? So you're going to look at the numbers and you're going to decide, did these students improve or not? So if they improved, that's great. Did they improve enough where they can stop services? That's great. They met their goal, and that's the whole point of counseling, right? Now, maybe they improved a little bit, but they're still struggling in a lot of areas. Then you can assess, is this something you can help them with? Maybe they don't need the intensive level 3 intervention. Maybe they can move back down to level 2 and go to a group. Maybe they don't need that one-on-one individualized support anymore, but they would still benefit from additional counseling in a group. Or maybe you're going to just do like a once-a-month check-in or something like that. Now, let's say that they're not showing progress at all. Instead of just redoing counseling services with you completely again, you can do one of 2 things. You can, look at what you did with them and see if there's ways you can improve. So maybe, you feel like the activities that you were using or the curriculum you were using wasn't really aligned to their needs. So you could see them for, I wouldn't do 8 weeks again, but you could do like 3 or 4 more weeks after tweaking it. So you don't want to just do the same thing, You want to tweak it and then see if maybe that was the problem. Or if nothing's working with you, don't take it personally, but refer out. So this may be a need that you are not qualified to do or that you need support with. So it is okay. This doesn't mean you are a bad counselor, that you're not good at your job, but it just means that you're not the right person to help them, or maybe they need more support than you can provide as a school counselor in a school setting. So in that case, you could refer them out to like private counseling or, a therapist, or maybe make a recommendation for a psychologist, or you never know. And you want to have resources available, like a community resource guide available for parents to access with, public and private options, or you can work with your administrator on this, but being able to provide them with some contacts of the next step is great, because you don't want them to feel overwhelmed and not take that next step, because that would inhibit the student from getting the help that they need. And again, you can collaborate with the community and get support. So it's okay. I know at one school I worked at, we had private counselors come in, and sometimes I would feel weird, like, well, why are they seeing them and not me? But it was for a different need. So collaborate with them. Don't feel like you're a one-woman show or a one-man show. You can definitely use your community resources. So collaborate with your school psychologist. If they're getting speech services, collaborate with the speech-language pathologist. Collaborate with their teachers. Make sure that you're really utilizing your team and collaborating with the community resources as well. So if you do refer them out, keep in touch with the person that you refer them to and see how you can support them at the school level as well. Maybe it's with intermediate check-ins or something like that. So those are 4 ways that you can collect data, and then what you're going to do once you've collected the data. And of course, remember, I always like to encourage you to put that data in an end of the year report. I'll link to the one I use in the show notes. I'll actually link to the blog post where I explain kind of what it is and how to do it. But once you collect the data, you can put it in that report, and that's a great way to advocate for your role, which we're always continuing to do. I hope you guys found that helpful, and I'll talk to you next week.
Thanks for listening to School Counseling Simplified. You can find the links from today's episode in the show notes. If you'd like to connect with Rachel, she's on Instagram and Teachers Pay Teachers at Bright Futures Counseling. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any episodes of School Counseling Simplified. Talk to you next week.